Hi guys, in this video I will be talking about essays. I've noticed that essays trouble many people, even just understanding what essays mean is a challenge for most of us. And again, now doing the actual essay, understanding the structure, the types and everything is becoming a problem for many people. So I've decided to record this class so that it can help anyone out there that might be, having trouble understanding essays and actually approaching them. But before we go into it, as always, if you're new on the platform, remember to subscribe. Also, turn on the notification bell so that each time I upload a new video, you'll be among the first to know. So let's get right into it. So the first thing is to understand what is an essay. So I got these definitions from Google, and I think they are accurate. So one of the things we need to understand is that an essay is a short piece of writing on a particular topic or subject. So obviously you need to know that it's a short, okay? So most essays will range from 2 to 4 pages, okay? Maybe 5 on the higher side. So another definition that I also liked is that an essay is a short formal piece of writing, usually dealing with a single subject. So essays are typically written to persuade or inform the reader using selected research evidence. So obviously, when you're writing an essay, you need some research skills because you need to do a little bit of research to verify or to support the arguments that you'll be putting across. A standard essay will have 5 paragraphs distributed as follows. And I say standard because I know that sometimes you might have a longer essay or even a shorter one with fewer paragraphs, or even a longer one with more than 5 paragraphs. But in a standard essay, you'll have 5. These ones are distributed as follows. So obviously, you have 1 introductory paragraph, 3 body paragraphs, and a single concluding paragraphs. Okay. The first paragraph of an essay is the introduction. Okay. So obviously, the introduction is the first paragraph of an essay. It is usually in a single paragraph. The introduction is usually just 1 paragraph, but I've also seen other cases where you might have a long introduction, in which case you need to split into 2 or so paragraphs. But I think most of them will be just a single paragraph. So a standard introduction will have the following. So you need to have a hook, which is just a statement that you use to capture your reader's interest. Okay, and then you need to also provide some background information on the subject or topic. And then the last sentence is the thesis statement, which basically declares the position you've taken and at least 3 points that you will use in the body section to support that position. Okay, so I previously recorded a video on how to do good introductions, and I'll attach the video in the description. So if you haven't watched that, be sure to check it out so that you understand how the hook, the background, and the thesis statement are coming about in a good introduction. So obviously the body is where you now discuss each point, okay, one by one. So in a standard essay, like I've said, is that you need to have 3 body paragraphs. And of course, each will have a different idea, different point, or different argument. So in the body, this is where you explain the argument, you give specific examples, you demonstrate. If there are any causal relationships, you need to show these relationships, okay? And then, of course, you support the claim by integrating academic sources. Integrating an academic source within a paper is more than just putting a citation at the end of a sentence. I have a video in which I have described the process of effectively integrating scientific material within a paper. So be sure to also check it out. I'll leave the link in the description box so that it's easier for you to locate it. So remember, integrating does more than just append an in-text citation at the end of a sentence. You need to describe the study a little bit more so that we see clearly how that study is supporting your arguments and how it is coming. How is it now, featuring? How is it appearing? How is it integrating with your work? So obviously, whenever you're writing your paragraphs, the rules of paragraphing will apply. Some of these rules include the first sentence of every paragraph is usually the thesis or topic sentence, which basically declares what that paragraph is all about. And then, of course, you need to include 3 to 6 explanatory sentences, and then you need to end with a concluding sentence. Remember, each paragraph must be limited to the discussion of one idea or topic. Okay, do not mix up the paragraphs. Okay, if you have 10 ideas, we expect you to have 10 paragraphs. The conclusion is typically a summary of major points, okay? And therefore, you do not need to introduce any new information in the conclusion. And I've seen many people doing this mistake where they make the conclusion about giving advice, or they, the points that they felt they could not write in the body, now they try to fix them within the conclusion. Remember, the conclusion is just a summary of what you have already talked about. And even that, and therefore in that case, it means you should not be including citations in the conclusion because it's merely a summary of everything that you've already talked about. So a good conclusion will begin by restating the thesis statement, which is usually the last end of introduction, to remind your readers what the essay was all about. And then after restating the thesis statement, you summarize all the major points. You summarize all of them. It's important you summarize all of them. Do not just focus on one. So if you have 10 points, you need to talk about all of them briefly in a one to two sentences in the conclusion. And then you end with a final thought, which is basically a takeaway message. And the mistake I've seen most people do is that they make the conclusion all about takeaway message, all about giving advice. The government should, businesses should. Remember, the conclusion is strictly a summary of the points which you've already discussed. And then just an advice that, remember, the conclusion is also a paragraph on its own. It's also a major section of an essay. So don't do it as an afterthought. Plan for it. It should be a well-developed paragraph with substantial number of sentences, okay? A thesis sentence, which is usually the restatement of the thesis statement, and then a concluding sentence. I've had cases of where people ask me, now, how do I know if this is an essay or not? Okay, basically, how do I know if I need an introduction and a conclusion or not? Okay, so sometimes it may not be that clear whether you need to handle an assignment or a question in the essay format. Okay, so some of the tips I use is look at the instructions. Sometimes the question might include some a wording like essay, in essay format, or write an essay of 2 pages. So if the word essay appears somewhere in the question, obviously that is an essay. Okay, so you need an introduction, a minimum of 3 body paragraphs, and a conclusion. And then, of course, you can also look at the subject, which is basically the area of inquiry. Okay, so if the question is posing one subject, just one area of inquiry, it is possible, therefore, to do it as an essay. Because as we started with when we started, I mentioned that an essay is a piece of paper on one subject, just one area of inquiry. If the assignment is asking for multiple lines of inquiry, maybe it's that it touches on COVID-19, corruption, salaries, social media. Those are different lines of inquiries that you can't really put down as an essay unless you want to do an essay for each one of them. So you have multiple essays. Okay, so if it's asking for multiple lines of inquiry, then of course that is not an essay. But if it's on a single line of inquiry, just a single subject area, then it's possible to approach it as an essay, holding the other factors constant. Then you also look at the length. We have already said that a standard essay will have a minimum of 5 paragraphs, and a well-developed paragraph will have about 8 sentences. So if you see an assignment is asking for 200 words, can you do an essay in 200 words? Will 5 paragraphs, each with a minimum of 6 sentences or thereabout, fit in a 200 word assignment? No. And therefore, if it's too short, if the question is too short, asking for very, very few words, very few pages, then of course it is not possible to approach it as an essay. Okay, typical essay will begin from 2 pages, which is about 600 words and above. Okay. Let us look at the types of essays. So, to the best of my knowledge, most essays are categorized based on the purpose, okay? Based on the purpose, okay? So, different essays will have different purposes. You'll write an essay for different purposes. So, based on the purpose, we'll give that essay a name, okay? So, some of the common types of essays include persuasive essays, descriptive essays, analytical essays, and argumentative essays. We might have more. We actually do have more. You can check it out on the internet. But a persuasive essay is basically meant to persuade an audience, okay, to react in a particular way or to believe in a particular view, okay. And a good example would be you writing an essay to persuade people to take the COVID-19 vaccine, okay. So that will be a persuasive essay. You might also write an essay to describe something. It could be a person, a place, an experience, okay, so that people understand it, okay. A good example would be describe how kidney dialysis works. So here you're not trying to sell anything, you're just describing how kidney dialysis works. Analytical essays are meant to analyze something, maybe analyze a procedure, analyze a book, a film, or any other piece of writing, okay. We'll call that analytical essay. Argumentative, you're arguing in favor or against something. Maybe you're arguing that electric vehicles are better than conventional cars. So we'll call that type of essay argumentative. So let us look at each one of these essays one by one, starting with persuasive essays. So these ones are written to persuade, the reader on certain things. Maybe you want to persuade them to do something, to take action on something, to believe in a particular viewpoint. Basically, you want them to do something, okay? So it presents logical arguments with emotional appeal. Okay, obviously you have to have some emotional appeal so that you convince them, you persuade them, you sway them to a particular view. Okay, so mostly persuasive essays do not present a balanced view because you're trying to sell an idea. You can't really, tell them a balanced view. You just want them to believe your position. You just want them to believe your side. So you're biased. So persuasive essays are biased, by nature, because you're trying to, just talk about one side, okay? You might even disregard or disqualify the opposing side, okay? So obviously, to persuade readers, you need to tell them the benefits of what you want them to do. If you want them to believe in a particular way, what are the benefits? And then, of course, tell them the dangers of not doing what you want them to do. And then maybe you need to address possible reasons for their reluctance. I mean, if you have to persuade them, then it only means that there are some factors that are preventing them to do what you want them to do in the first place. So you need to address those. Next, we have descriptive essays. So these ones are typically written to describe something. It could be an object, a person, a place, an experience, an emotion, or even a situation. So they give a vivid, detailed description of something. So obviously you're gonna use descriptive language, such as figurative language, where you liken things. And then of course you need to be very careful with your word choice. But essentially, just be vivid. Let those things, the thing you're describing, come to life. Give it an identity so that it's clear in the eyes of your readers. Okay. But remember, in this kind of essays, you're not trying to sell an idea. You're not trying to persuade them to do something. Just basically stating things the way they are. But you have to do it in an interesting way. In analytical essays, you basically write to provide substantive feedback or analysis of a topic, okay? So it could be a piece of art, music, literary works, current events, historical events, politics, even some scientific studies, philosophies, principles. Basically, you're trying to analyze, to show the good and the bad side, to critique, okay? So remember, analytical essays are not summaries, although you will typically be required to begin with a summary of whatever you're analyzing. So if you're analyzing a book, you will have to start with a short summary of the book, maybe give a plot summary of what happened in the book or what the book is all about, okay? So remember, you need to offer a substantive critique of themes, characters, plot, production, or any other angles you decide, to use to analyze whatever you're analyzing. Okay. For example, in a film, you might be interested in analyzing the overall production, the lighting, the setting, the characters, the costumes. So basically, you're analyzing, identifying the good things, the bad things, what was done well, what wasn't done well, what can be improved. Okay. So in a book or an article, you might be focused on the themes, analyzing the themes, how they are coming about, what elements did the author use to bring out those themes and everything. Okay. A key thing about this kind of essays, you need to provide evidence. Okay, from the text, from the movie, or whatever you're analyzing. There must be evidence. In case of a movie, you need to quote specific instances within the film. Okay. In the case of a book, you need to quote specific pages. Sometimes even you need to include some direct quotes that are supporting the position, the claims you're making. Okay. On analytical essays, it's also good that you show the bad and positive sides. Okay, of course, with reason and evidence. Use analytical language. You can Google out what analytical language means. Okay, so that you understand. Okay, but you need to use analytical language as opposed to descriptive language. So show the relationship between variables. And then, of course, just a little bit of advice is that this kind of essays require high level of analytical skills, which basically mean the ability to deconstruct information into smaller categories to draw conclusions. So if it's a book, we need to, to deconstruct it, to identify themes, identify characters, identify, maybe rhetoric elements used. Okay. So some of these skills include the logical reasoning, critical thinking, communication, research, data analysis, and of course, a little bit of creativity. Okay. Up is argumentative essays. These ones are written to make a stance on a topic. So basically, you need to take a position, make a stand. Okay. One thing I know about this kind of essays is that they require a lot of research because you need to develop an argument, and before you even go ahead with an argument, you need to make sure it's actually valid. And it hasn't been discredited before. So there's a lot of research that goes into coming up with arguments. So to show that they're actually true and there are no possible counter arguments. Because if you just put an argument without having a good understanding of the possible counter arguments, you can really look stupid. So obviously you need to do a lot of research. Okay. So as opposed to what you call persuasive essays, argumentative essays tend to present a balanced view. You present both sides of the coin. So obviously, you'll begin with your argument, what you're trying to argue for, and then identify possible counter arguments. But of course, you must rebut the counter arguments to reaffirm your position on the topic, to reaffirm your stance. So I think we still have more on argument. Yes, so a standard argumentative essay will have the following sections. Obviously, we'll have an introduction, as is the case for all kinds of essays. And then you'll have a section where you present your argument. So, come up with about 3 points in support of the position or the stance you've taken. And then appreciate counter-argument. Identify the points that your opposers are using, okay? So come up with a list of counter-argument, discuss them, say what are they saying about the topic to oppose you. But of course, you must rebut. Okay, so you need to have a rebuttal section where you prove that the counter arguments are false or unreasonable. Okay, you need to show that these counter arguments are not called for, they are reasonable, they are false. Disqualify them. This now allows you to reaffirm your position. Okay, and then you need to have a conclusion. As always, this is the case for all types of essays. So as an example to show the argument and counter-argument and rebuttal, let's say you're working on a topic that electric vehicles are better than conventional vehicles. So you're making one of the arguments you're making, okay, in support of the position is that electric vehicles use renewable energy and are therefore, environmentally friendly. Okay, and then after you've discuss all the arguments. A counter argument can be that electric vehicles are limited in terms of speed. Like the fastest EV, can only get to around 258 miles per hour, whereas gas-powered vehicles can top 300 miles per hour. So you're trying to say that, this is now your opposers trying to say, yes, I know you're supporting EVs, but they are not as fast. Okay. Now, to disqualify that, to rebut that counter argument, you can now say, yes, most EVs are not as fast. They provide minimum speed, but at the end of the day, not many people require a lot of speed anyway, So these cars provide enough speed for day-to-day driving. Not many people drive at 300 miles per hour anyway. So the idea of speed is relevant. I mean, if no one is, driving at that high speed, we don't even need that. That is not even an argument. So in this case, you have just reaffirmed your position that, you know what, I know you guys might be thinking that EVs are not so fast, but who needs speed anyway? So don't even tell me about speed, because who drives at 300 miles per hour anyway? Okay. So I think that is all about essays. Each one of these sections I can go into detail in subsequent videos. I can now take an example of argumentative essay to do it practically. I can also pick another type of essay, descriptive, show examples, so that we just have a good understanding. I've also noticed that speeches are also some kind of essays, because they use the essay structure where you introduce, you have the body, and then you have a conclusion. So I think in the next video, I'll be talking about how to write a speech. Okay, a speech is something you write and then you expect it to be delivered. You either go read it out or just, submit it for people to read. Okay, so I'll be talking about the structure of a speech, so that we see how is it similar to essays. So until next time, stay peaceful.